The red dust of Kepler 442b swirled around the mining colony as another day ended under the pale orange sun. The settlement looked like a collection of metal boxes scattered across the barren landscape. Each building was connected by covered walkways that protected the workers from the thin atmosphere and frequent dust storms. Naltha pressed her scaled face against the medical bay window and watched her mother struggle to breathe. Kesara lay on the narrow bed with tubes running from her arms to machines that beeped and hummed. The Vorthon female was much larger than her daughter. Her green scales had lost their shine and turned a dull gray color that meant sickness in their species. The medical droid floated beside the bed, making its routine scans. Its mechanical voice spoke in the flat tone that all the colony machines used. Patient condition remains critical. Respiratory function declining. Recommend comfort measures only. Naltha felt her heart sink deeper into her chest. She was young. For a Vorthon, at only 15 cycles old, but she understood what comfort measures meant. It meant the machines had given up. It meant they should prepare for her mother to join the ancestors. There must be something else you can do, Naltha said to the droid. Her voice cracked with desperation. The droid turned its sensor array toward her. This unit is equipped for basic medical care only. Patient requires specialized treatment. Not available at this facility. Nearest Vorthon Medical Center is 47 days travel time. 47 days. Kesara would not last 47 hours at the rate she was declining. Naltha had watched other Vorthons die from the wasting. Sickness. First came the breathing problems, then the scales would lose their color. Finally, the vital organs would shut down one by one until nothing remained. The young Vorthon walked to her mother's bedside and took one of her large hands. Kesara's eyes opened slowly. They were still the bright yellow that Naltha remembered from her childhood, but they seemed dim now. "Little Scale," Kesara whispered, using the pet name she had called her daughter since hatching. "You should not see me like this." "Mother, I am not leaving you," Naltha replied. "The droid says we need special treatment. Maybe we can find help somewhere else." Kesara tried to shake her head, but the movement made her cough violently. When the fit passed, she spoke again. "Child, the sickness has chosen me. It is the way of things. We must accept what cannot be changed." But Naltha could not accept it. She had heard the older colonists talk during their evening meals. They spoke of strange beings from a blue planet who never accepted defeat. These humans were new to the galaxy, and other species found them confusing. They did impossible things, and refused to give up even when all hope was gone. The stories said there was a human engineer working in the Outer Rim territories. His name was Jiho, and he maintained the deep space equipment that kept the mining operations running. The older, workers said he could fix anything that broke. Some even claimed he had saved lives when the proper medical equipment was not available. As night fell over the colony, Naltha made her decision. She could not watch her mother die when there might be help somewhere among the stars. The transport, shuttles were kept in the main hangar bay. She had watched the pilots many times and thought she understood the basic controls. Naltha waited until the shift change when most colonists were either sleeping or eating their evening meal. She helped her mother into a mobility chair and pushed her through the quiet corridors toward the hangar. Each step felt like it took forever. Kesara was barely conscious, and her breathing had become more labored. The hangar bay was empty except for the maintenance droids that continued their work regardless of the time. 3 small shuttles sat on their landing pads. Naltha chose the smallest one that still had a medical emergency kit according to its exterior markings. Getting her mother aboard was the hardest part. Kesara was twice her daughter's size and weight. Naltha had to use the shuttle's loading ramp and push the mobility chair up into the passenger compartment. She connected her mother to the shuttle's basic life support systems and strapped her into one of the medical beds. The control panel looked more complicated up close than it had from a distance. Dozens of switches and displays covered every surface. Naltha found what she hoped was the power activation sequence and pressed the buttons in order. The shuttle hummed to life around them. She had memorized the coordinates for Sector 7, where the human engineer supposedly worked. The navigation. Computer accepted her input but displayed several warning messages about fuel consumption and travel time. Naltha ignored the warnings and engaged the launch sequence. The shuttle lifted off from the colony with a roar that echoed across the barren landscape. Through the viewports, Naltha could see the mining facility growing smaller below them. Soon, they were climbing through the thin atmosphere toward the black of space. As they left the planet's gravity well behind, the real journey began. The navigation system calculated their flight time at 18 hours if everything went perfectly. But Naltha was not a trained pilot, and the shuttle was not designed for long-range medical transport. Kesara's condition grew worse as the hours passed. The basic life support systems were keeping her alive, but she was slipping deeper into unconsciousness. Naltha sat beside her mother's bed and held her hand while the stars moved slowly past the shuttle windows. She had committed herself to this desperate path. There was no turning back now. Either they would find the human engineer who could work miracles, or they would die together in the cold emptiness between worlds. For a young Vorthan who had never traveled beyond her home colony, it was a choice that required more courage than she knew she possessed. The shuttle continued its lonely flight through space, carrying two aliens toward an uncertain meeting with humanity. Jiho wiped the sweat from his forehead as he worked inside the cramped maintenance shaft of terraforming satellite TF-7. The artificial gravity generator had been acting up again, and he was the only engineer within 3 systems who knew how to fix the old model. His hands moved quickly through the tangle of wires and circuits that kept the massive machine running. The human engineer preferred working alone in the deep space territories. Out here, between the major trade routes, he could focus on his projects without dealing with the politics and bureaucracy of the inner colonies. His engineering station orbited a dead moon in an empty system. It was not much to look at, but it had everything he needed to maintain the terraforming equipment that slowly turned hostile worlds into places where life could grow. Jiho was 28 years old and had been working in space for 6 years. He had grown up on Earth in the crowded cities of Korea, but always felt more comfortable with machines than people. Space engineering suited him perfectly. The work was challenging and important, but he could do it at his own pace without supervisors, breathing down his neck. The communication panel in his suit crackled to life with static. At first, he thought it was just interference from the satellite's power core, but then he heard something that made him stop working. It sounded like a voice, but the transmission was weak and broken up. "Help. Please. Dying. Mother." The words came through mixed with static and what sounded like electronic translation errors. Jiho floated out of the maintenance shaft and activated his suit's communication system. "This is Engineering Station 7. I am receiving your transmission. But the signal is very weak. Please repeat your message." The response came back garbled and desperate. He could make out words like sick and medical and emergency, but the rest was lost in static. The translator was having trouble with whatever language the speaker was using. After several minutes of trying to communicate, Jiho managed to understand that someone was asking for medical help. This was a problem. Jiho was an engineer, not a doctor. His station had basic first aid supplies, but nothing for serious medical emergencies. The nearest hospital was days away even for a fast ship. But something in the desperate tone of the transmission made him want to help. "I am not a medical doctor," he transmitted back. "But if you can reach my station, I will do whatever I can to assist you." It took another hour of broken communication before Jiho understood the situation. A young alien was piloting a damaged shuttle with her dying mother aboard. They were lost and running low on fuel. Their navigation system was failing and they had no idea where they were. Jiho activated his station's long-range sensors and began scanning for the shuttle. It took time. But eventually he found a small heat signature moving erratically through space about 2 million kilometers away. The ship's engine was operating at dangerous temperatures and its course was wildly off target. Working quickly, Jiho transmitted navigation corrections and talked the inexperienced pilot through an approach to his station. It was clear that whoever was flying the shuttle had almost no training. The approach was shaky, and several times he thought they were going to crash into his docking bay. When the shuttle finally landed with a grinding impact that made his whole station shake, Jiho was already suited up and waiting in the airlock. He had converted his main workshop into a temporary medical area using every piece of life support equipment he could find. The shuttle's hatch opened with a hiss of escaping atmosphere, and Jiho got his first look at the occupants. A young reptilian alien stumbled out carrying a medical scanner. She was small for her species, with bright green scales and large yellow eyes that showed exhaustion and terror. Behind her, a much larger alien lay unconscious on a shuttle bed. The adult's scales had turned gray, and her breathing was so shallow that Jiho could barely see her chest moving. Even without medical training, he could tell she was dying. "Please," the young alien said in heavily accented Standard Galactic. "My mother very sick. Colony machines say nothing can help. You are human, yes? Humans fix everything. Please help my mother." Jiho looked at the dying alien and felt something shift inside his chest. Every logical part of his mind told him this was hopeless. He had no medical training and no proper equipment. The alien's physiology was completely unknown to him. Any rational person would make the dying comfortable and wait for the inevitable. But Jiho was human, and humans did not give up. "What is your name?" he asked the young alien as he helped move her mother to the makeshift medical bed. "I am Naltha. My mother is Kessara. We are Vorthon people. I am Jiho. I cannot promise anything, but I will not let your mother die without..." Trying everything possible, Naltha stared at him with those large yellow eyes. In her people's culture, when the body began to fail, it was time to prepare for death. The idea that someone would fight against the natural order was foreign to her understanding. "You will really try to save her?" she asked. Jiho was already connecting monitoring equipment to the unconscious Vorthon. "Not on my watch," he said, with determination that surprised even himself. Those 4 words would echo through the galaxy in the days to come. But for now, they were just the promise of one human who refused to accept that anything was impossible. Jiho stared at the strange readings on his improvised medical scanner. The device was actually a mineral analyzer that he had modified to read biological signatures, but it was the best he could do with his limited equipment. Kessara's vital signs were unlike anything in the human medical databases, but he could see that several key systems were failing rapidly. The Vorthon mother lay unconscious on the workshop table that Jiho had converted into a medical bed. Her breathing had become even more shallow, and her gray scales felt cold to the touch. Naltha sat beside her, holding her mother's large hand, while tears ran down her scaled cheeks. "The machines on the colony said her kidneys are not working," Naltha explained. "In Vorthon language, we call it the wasting sickness. When it comes, there is no cure. The body slowly stops cleaning the blood until everything fails." Jiho nodded as he studied the scanner readings. He was not a doctor, but he understood systems and how they worked. If Kessara's organs were failing to filter waste from her blood, then he needed to find a way to do that job for them. On Earth, humans used machines called dialysis units for the same problem. "I need to contact someone who knows more about alien biology," Jiho said. "Do you mind if I send a message to my friend on Mars?" Naltha looked confused. "You would ask others to help strangers? That is what humans do," Jiho replied as he activated his communication array. The message took 8 minutes to reach Mars and another 8 for the reply to come back. Jiho's friend Mina was a xenobiologist who studied how different alien species lived and evolved. She had worked with many species, but never Vorthans. Jiho, you are crazy, came Mina's voice over the communication channel. You cannot perform medical procedures on an unknown alien species. You could kill her faster than the disease. She is dying anyway, Jiho replied. If I do nothing, she will be dead in hours. I have to try something. There was a long pause before Mina responded. Send me all the scanner data you have. I will contact the xenobiology database on Earth and see what we can find about Vorthan physiology. But Jiho, this is incredibly dangerous. While waiting for more information, Jiho began working on the equipment he would need. His workshop was filled with spare parts from various machines. He had water purification filters that might work to clean blood. There were pumps from the life support systems that could move fluids through tubes. Most importantly, he had a fabrication unit that could create custom components from raw materials. Naltha watched in amazement as the human engineer began tearing apart expensive equipment to build something entirely new. Why are you destroying your machines? She asked. They are just tools, Jiho said, as he carefully removed a pump mechanism. Tools exist to solve problems. Your mother is the problem I need to solve. Hours passed as Jiho worked without stopping. He did not eat or rest, or even sit down for more than a few minutes. His hands moved quickly through the pile of components as he built something that had never existed before. A dialysis machine designed specifically for Vorthan biology, based on the limited data Mina had been able to find. Naltha had never seen anyone work with such focused intensity. Among her people, when someone became sick, the community would gather to sing the traditional songs and prepare for the journey to join the ancestors. No one fought against death like this strange human was doing. Your people must be very afraid of dying, she said as Jiho tested another component. Jiho looked up from his work. We are not afraid of death, we are afraid of giving up too soon. The communication array crackled to life again. This time it was not just Mina's voice. Jiho heard several other people talking in the background and realized his friend had contacted other researchers. Jiho, we have some information, Mina said. The Vorthan kidney equivalent has 3 filtering chambers instead of 2 like most species. You will need to create a more complex cleaning system than standard dialysis. Another voice joined the conversation. This is Dr. Junho from the Mars Medical Center. I have been reviewing the scanner data your friend sent. The toxin levels in the patient's blood are extremely high. She needs treatment immediately. More voices came over the channel as other humans learned about the situation and offered to help. Someone had contacted a researcher on Europa who had studied similar organ failure in reptilian species. A military medic on Titan provided information about emergency life support procedures. Even a trading ship captain offered to divert his course to bring medical supplies. Jiho listened to the flood of information and advice while his hands continued working on the machine. This was something Naltha had never experienced before. An entire network of humans were volunteering their time and knowledge to save her mother. They had never met Kesara and would receive no payment for their help. They were doing it simply because it was the right thing to do. As the night cycle progressed, Jiho's improvised dialysis machine began to take shape. It looked nothing like the sleek medical equipment from the colony. Instead, it was a collection of tubes and pumps and filters held together with improvised brackets and emergency welds. But when Jiho ran the first tests, the machine began cleaning sample blood exactly as it was supposed to. It works, he said with exhaustion and relief in his voice. Now we just have to hope it works on your mother. The news spread through human settlements like wildfire across dry grass. Jiho's emergency request for medical information had reached dozens of researchers and doctors. But humans being humans, the story did not stop with the medical community. Each person who heard about the desperate rescue mission told others, and soon the entire human network in that sector of space knew about the dying Vorthan mother and her brave daughter. Hyon was a trader who normally carried manufactured goods. Between the industrial worlds and mining colonies, his ship was 3 days out from Jiho's position when he received the message from his cousin on Mars. The message included a list of rare minerals that might be needed to build advanced medical equipment. Without hesitation, Hyon changed his course toward Engineering Station 7. His cargo hold was full of valuable electronics, but none of that mattered now. He began checking his manifest for anything that might help save an alien life. In the emergency supplies, he found medical-grade titanium and several rare earth elements that were perfect for building precision instruments. Control, this is trader vessel Lucky Dragon, requesting permission to alter flight plan for medical. Emergency! Hyon transmitted to the nearest traffic control station. The controller was confused. Lucky Dragon, you are not registered for medical transport. What is the nature of this emergency? A human engineer needs help to save someone's life, Hyon replied simply. There was a pause before the controller responded. Permission granted, Lucky Dragon. Good luck. On the research station orbiting Europa, Dr. Somin was working late in her laboratory when she received Mina's request for information about alien organ failure. Somin had spent years studying how different species processed toxins and waste products. Her research was considered highly classified because it had military applications. But when she read about the young Vorthan trying to save her mother, Somin did not hesitate. She copied her entire database of alien physiology research and transmitted it to Mars. Then she began writing a detailed analysis of Vorthan metabolism based on the limited data available. Her supervisor found her at her desk the next morning, still working on the analysis. Somin, what are you doing? That research is classified. You cannot share it with civilian engineers. Someone is dying, Somin said without looking up from her work. The research exists to save lives. If we cannot use it for that purpose, then what good is it? The supervisor started to argue, but stopped when he saw the determination in her eyes. He had worked with Somin for 5 years and knew that no regulation would stop her from helping someone in need. Just make sure the transmission is encrypted, he said quietly. 3 systems away on the military base at Wolf 359, Chief Engineer Do-Yun was reviewing maintenance reports when his communication panel chimed with an emergency message. The message was from someone he had never heard of requesting technical specifications for advanced life support systems. Most people would have ignored the request or reported it as a possible security breach. But the message mentioned that the information was needed to save an alien life, and something about that phrase made Do-Hyun pay attention. He pulled up the classified schematics for the military's most advanced medical equipment. These were designs that had taken years to develop and were considered vital to Earth's defense capabilities. But Do-Hyun thought about his own daughter back on Earth and what he would do if she was dying in some remote corner of space. 20 minutes later, the schematics were on their way to Engineering Station 7 with a note that simply said, from one engineer to another. Back at the station, Ji-Ho watched his communication array light up with incoming messages from humans across the galaxy. Technical data poured in from researchers and engineers and doctors he had never met. Ship captains reported their positions and offered to bring supplies. Medical students on Earth stayed up all night translating alien physiology texts. Naltha sat beside her mother's bed watching the strange display of human cooperation with growing amazement. All these people are helping my mother? She asked. That is what humans do, Ji-Ho replied as he downloaded another set of medical specifications. We take care of each other, but they do not know us. We are not human. Why would they help? Ji-Ho looked up from the data stream flowing across his screens. Life is precious. It does not matter what species you are. As the hours passed, Ji-Ho's improvised medical equipment became more sophisticated. Using the advanced schematics from Do-Yun, he built better monitoring systems. The research data from Somin allowed him to fine-tune the blood cleaning process for Vorthan physiology. When Hyon's ship arrived with rare materials, Ji-Ho was able to construct components that would have been impossible with his original supplies. Other alien species monitoring human communications began to take notice. The Hegemony Council received reports about the massive human effort to save a single Vorthan life. Some council members were suspicious about human motives. Others were simply confused by behavior that made no logical sense. They are spending vast resources to help someone who cannot repay them, reported the Zentari Observer. This is either elaborate deception or genuine altruism on a scale we have not seen before. The Vorthan representative on the council was particularly interested in the reports. If humans are truly willing to help strangers without reward, then perhaps we have underestimated their character, she said thoughtfully. But the galaxy's political reactions did not matter to Jiho. His entire focus remained on the unconscious Vorthan female connected to his improvised life support systems. Kessara's condition had stabilized over the past day, and some of her vital signs were actually improving. The gray color was slowly fading from her scales, and her breathing was becoming stronger. For the first time since arriving at the station, Naltha allowed herself to feel hope. She had seen her people die from the wasting sickness before, and none of them had ever recovered once the organs began failing. But her mother was not just surviving, she was getting better. Is she really going to live? Naltha asked as she watched the monitoring displays show steadily improving numbers. Jiho smiled for the first time in days. I think your mother is too stubborn to die on my watch. The story reached Earth 3 weeks after Kessara had made her full recovery. News services across the planet picked up the remarkable tale of the human engineer who had saved an alien life using nothing but spare parts and determination. The story spread through Earth's networks, and then bounced to human colonies throughout known space. On Earth, in the bustling city of Sol Yunji, was having breakfast when the news report appeared on her screen. She nearly choked on her coffee when she heard her brother's name. Jiho had always been quiet and preferred working alone, but now his face was being broadcast across the entire galaxy. Yunji worked as a diplomat in Earth's Department of Alien Relations. Her job was to help different species understand human culture and values, but until now she had never realized how difficult that task really was. Her communication device chimed with an urgent message from her supervisor. Yunji, get to the embassy immediately. We have 7 different alien ambassadors demanding explanations about your brother's actions. At the embassy building in downtown Seoul, Yunji found herself facing a room full of confused and concerned alien diplomats. The Zentari ambassador was pacing back and forth with his forearms moving in agitated gestures. The hegemony representative sat perfectly still, but her eyes showed deep suspicion. Diplomat Yunji, we need to understand what your brother was really trying to accomplish, said the Zentari ambassador. Our analysts cannot find any logical explanation for his actions. He saved someone's life, Yunji replied simply. What other explanation do you need? But why? Asked the hegemony representative. The Vorthan female was unknown to him. Her species offers no trade advantages to humanity. There was no political benefit to helping her. Our experts have calculated that the resources spent on this rescue could have benefited thousands of humans. Instead, Yunji looked around the room at the alien faces staring at her with confusion and suspicion. How could she explain something that seemed as natural as breathing to every human she knew? In human culture, every life has value, she began carefully. We do not help people because we expect something in return. We help because it is the right thing to do. The aliens exchanged glances that clearly showed they did not understand. In their societies, resources were carefully managed and allocated based on logical criteria. Spending vast amounts of time and materials to help a stranger made no sense to their way of thinking. But surely your brother expected some form of compensation, pressed the Zentari ambassador. Perhaps favorable treatment in future trade negotiations with Vorthan worlds? No, Yunji said with growing frustration. He helped because someone asked for help. That is what humans do. While diplomats on Earth struggled to explain human behavior, the effects of Jiho's rescue continued to spread across the galaxy. Other aliens in desperate situations began seeking out human settlements. The underground network of human engineers and doctors who had helped save Kesara found themselves dealing with more emergency requests. On the mining colony of Kepler 186F, a Zentari worker suffered severe injuries when a tunnel collapsed. The colony's medical facilities were designed for human physiology and could not properly treat Zentari wounds. But Dr. Wanho, a former military medic who had helped coordinate medical advice during Kesara's treatment, happened to be visiting the colony. Using the same approach that had worked for the Vorthan mother, Wanho improvised treatment using mining equipment and contacted human medical experts across the galaxy. Within hours, he had detailed instructions for treating Zentari injuries and the materials he needed to build proper surgical tools. The Zentari worker made a full recovery, and word of the incident spread through Zentari communication networks. For the first time in their species' history, they had encountered beings who would help them without expecting payment or political advantage. Similar incidents occurred throughout human space. A Vorthon trading ship suffered life support failure and was rescued by a human freighter captain who shared her emergency supplies. A group of hegemony researchers became stranded on a dead world and were saved by human colonists who spent their own resources to mount a rescue mission. Each incident added to the growing reputation of humans as a species that simply would not let others die if they could prevent it. The behavior was so unusual that alien sociologists began studying it as a unique phenomenon in galactic civilization. On the Vorthan homeworld, Kesara had become something of a celebrity. She traveled between cities giving talks about her experience, with the human engineer who had refused to let her die. Her audiences were fascinated by descriptions of beings who would destroy expensive equipment to save a stranger's life. "The humans have a saying," Kesara would tell her listeners. "They say not on my watch. It means that as long as they are present, they will not allow preventable death or suffering. This is not logic or emotion. It is simply who they are." Young Vorthans began asking their elders why their own people did not have this same determination to preserve life. The traditional acceptance of death when natural cures failed was being questioned for the first time in their species' history. Naltha had learned to speak fluent Standard Galactic and was serving as a cultural bridge between her people and the growing number of humans in Vorthon space. She often visited Jiho at his engineering station, which had become an unofficial embassy for aliens seeking human help. "Do you ever regret helping us?" she asked during one of her visits. "Your life was peaceful before we came." Jiho looked up from the medical device he was building for another emergency case. "Peaceful is not the same as meaningful," he said. "Helping people gives purpose to everything else I do." The galaxy was changing one saved life at a time, and at the center of it all was a simple human truth that other species were slowly beginning to understand. Every being deserved a chance to see another sunrise, and humans would move heaven and earth to make sure they got it. But not everyone was happy with these changes. In the shadows of galactic politics, some groups saw human compassion as a threat to the established order. They began making plans to test just how far human determination would go when faced with a real challenge. 6 months after Kesiara's rescue, the galaxy looked very different than it had before. What started as one engineer's refusal to give up had grown into something much larger. Humans throughout known space had begun organizing themselves into an informal network dedicated to preserving life wherever they found it. Jiho's engineering station had expanded far beyond its original purpose. The single docking bay where Naltha had first brought her dying mother now hosted a small fleet of ships. Medical transports arrived daily, carrying alien patients that conventional medicine had given up on. Research vessels brought new equipment, and supplies donated by human colonies across the galaxy. The station itself had grown to include a proper medical facility staffed by human volunteers. Dr. Naon, a young medical engineer inspired by Jiho's story, had designed standardized life support systems that could adapt to dozen different alien physiologies. Her modular medical devices were being copied and distributed to human settlements throughout the galaxy. "It started with your mother," Jiho told Naltha as they watched a Zentari family reunite with their child, who had just recovered from a previously untreatable genetic condition. "Now we save someone new every day." Naltha nodded as she updated the station's patient records. She had become Jiho's assistant and translator, helping bridge the gap between human medical techniques and alien biology. "My people have a new saying now. When someone becomes sick, we say, 'Do not worry, the humans will find a way.'" The informal rescue network had gained an official name thanks to Wanho, the military medic who had treated the injured Zentari worker. He called it the Terran Life Preservation Initiative, though most people simply referred to it as the network. There were no formal membership requirements or central organization. Humans joined simply by helping when they encountered someone in need. The network operated through the same communication channels that had saved Kesara. When an emergency call went out, human doctors and engineers and ship captains would respond from across the galaxy. Medical knowledge was shared freely. Ship captains diverted cargo runs to deliver supplies. Entire human colonies would pool their resources to fund expensive treatments. Other species watched these developments with varying degrees of confusion and concern. The Hegemony Council had held dozens of meetings trying to understand human motivations, but their analysts still could not explain why humans spent so much effort helping strangers. "Their behavior makes no economic sense," reported the Council's chief economist. "They have spent more resources on alien medical care in the past 6 months than most species spend on their own health care in a year. Perhaps that is exactly why they are becoming so influential," replied the Vorthon representative thoughtfully. "When beings know that humans will help them no matter what, they begin to trust human judgment in other matters as well." She was right. Human traders were finding that aliens preferred to do business with them over other species. Human colonies received more applications for immigration than they could process. Even alien governments were beginning to consult with human experts on problems that had nothing to do with medicine. The ripple effects were changing galactic politics in ways that no one had predicted. Species that had been enemies for centuries were cooperating on medical research projects initiated by humans. Trade routes were being established based on the network's need to move medical supplies quickly. Young aliens were learning human languages so they could work with network volunteers. On Earth, the Department of Alien Relations had established a new division just to coordinate with the network. Yunji found herself promoted to department head as alien ambassadors specifically, requested to work with someone who could explain human behavior. "Your species has created something unprecedented," the Hegemony ambassador told her during a recent meeting. "A galactic organization based entirely on voluntary cooperation and mutual aid. Our analysts predict that within 10 years, the networks will have more influence than most government." "That was never the goal," Yunji replied. "We just wanted to help people." "Which is exactly why it is working," the ambassador responded with something that might have been admiration. Back at Engineering Station 7, Jiho was working on his most ambitious project yet. The station's success had attracted the attention of Earth's government, and they had offered to build a proper medical research facility to replace his improvised workshop. But Jiho had turned down their offer. "The moment we make this official, it stops being about helping people and starts being about politics," he had told the government representatives. "I would rather keep using spare parts than lose the freedom to help anyone who needs it." Instead, Jiho was designing a new type of mobile medical station that could be built quickly and cheaply using standard industrial components. His plans called for a modular system that could be assembled at any human colony and staffed by network volunteers. "We could have 100 of these stations within 5 years, he explained to Naon as they reviewed the latest designs. Every major Human settlement could serve as an emergency medical center for their entire sector. The first prototype was already under construction at the industrial colony on Kepler 442b, where Naltha had originally lived. The mining colony that had once been unable to treat a simple case of organ failure was now preparing to become a regional medical hub for 3 different alien species. Naltha often visited her old home to help with the translation and cultural training that would be needed when the new station became operational. The colonists who had once accepted her mother's approaching death as inevitable now spoke excitedly about the lives they would soon be saving. "You changed everything," the colony administrator told her. "That desperate flight you took to save your mother has transformed our entire sector of space." But Naltha knew the real credit belonged to the human engineer who had looked at a dying alien and refused to accept defeat. Jiho's simple determination had awakened something in his entire species. The galaxy was learning that humans would not let anyone die alone or without hope. The network continued to grow with each life saved and each emergency answered. There was no central authority and no formal structure, but every human in known space understood the core principle. When someone called for help, you answered. When someone was dying, you found a way to save them. When the universe said something was impossible, you proved it wrong. It was not about species or politics or profit. It was about the fundamental human belief that every life mattered and that giving up was never an option. The galaxy was discovering what Earth had always known. When humans said, "Not on my watch," they meant it with every fiber of their being. And among the stars where death had once been met with resignation, alien voices now carried a new kind of hope. In dozens of languages across countless worlds, the same phrase was being spoken by beings who had learned it from humanity. "Not on my watch."